Hey guys, what we're going to quickly look at here is why the AFL has brought in a mandatory 2-week rest period for the AFL and a mandatory 3-week rest period for all suburban AFL games when people have a concussion. And it's probably the most important thing that everyone should know about concussion, just in case you or someone you know gets one. Okay, so what we've got here is we've got a nerve cell. And this is a normal functioning nerve cell. It's a very badly drawn one, I'll admit. But a normally functioning nerve cell, what will happen is an impulse will come along, and this is a nerve cell in the brain, of course. And the nerve impulse will get passed into the cell, and we'll get chemicals from the outside of the cell going in and chemicals from the inside of the cell going out. And that will cause the nerve impulse to be passed along and to be passed on to the next nerves. Now, when we get a concussion, this gets tricked. So if you think of a jelly wobbling around, what happens is the concussion stretches the nerve cell and it artificially makes stuff from the inside go out and stuff from the outside go in. And so the brain thinks that the nerve is firing when it's not actually firing. So if we did a graph, what it would look like is we have pop, 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 of the firing of the nerve cell. Now, what happens after that is that if we look at the energy, and we call this the energy in the brain, or ATP if you want to be really scientific about it, after this initial impulse, we get a drop over time, over the next few days, in the amount of energy in the brain. And this maximizes here at about 3 to 5 days. 3 to 5 days. And so if someone gets a concussion, they'll often slowly feel worse over the next few days because of this drop in energy. And after 3 or 4 days, it recovers and it starts to come back up again until it gets back to normal. Now, this period often takes about 3 weeks, and depending on the studies, it can be a little bit longer. But this is really important because if we actually, hang on, add something else in here. So what often happens is that people start feeling better about here, and they go, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. But what we know is that the energy level of the brain hasn't come back up, but people are starting to feel better. And what happens if they get a concussion at this point is it sets off another drop in energy. And now we have a bit of a problem, because once we get, say, below that level there, we can actually start getting cell death in the brain. And so it's this repeat concussion and this trajectory down here, which is why people start having problems, ongoing problems, and we're seeing people having to retire and that sort of thing because they've had a concussion before they've had this complete recovery. If, however, we wait for this, say, 3-week period, and we get to here, and we get another concussion, we're good. We're good because we don't go below that cell death line. So as long as, this is the bottom line, as long as we have, after a concussion, as long as we have this 3-week grace period for this energy level to recover in our brains, you can have, theoretically, multiple concussions and not have any long-term issues with it. And so this is why the AFL has brought in, for suburban football, 3-week mandatory period, and for the AFL it's 2 weeks. The reason in the AFL it's less is because they do cognitive testing beforehand and afterwards, so brain testing. And once people have cleared their testing and their testing is back to what it was previously, then they get the tick that, yeah, okay, your brain function is back to normal and you can go back to playing. And so this is the science behind why this new mandatory period for not playing. So if anyone you know gets a concussion, the biggest thing that they need to know is if they're playing sport or if they're riding a bike to work or whatever, you need to really avoid these things for at least the first 3 weeks, and then your brain will be protected. But if you get a second concussion in this first 3-week period, then you can start having some real long-term problems. So if you or anyone you know has some questions about concussion, this is purely just looking at this initial short-term problem, but we have post-concussion syndrome, we have all sorts of things related to long-term recovery of concussion, which aren't actually related to this, which we'll talk about in the next video.